and next week registration for the next reInvent opens. So there we go.
All right, great. All right, well, this is just a great opportunity. My name's Jason Bloomstein. I'm actually in the Bay Area here. John, I've been to some of our local Bay Area ones that you held it in.
Yeah, you look familiar.
Yeah. And I'll try to do my best Boston, although I have family there, but I'm not from there. But I don't think you want to hear my Boston accent. In any case, I have a talk that I gave about our small company that we put together that made a marketplace solution for AWS Marketplace. And our story was, we started years ago, me and just a small group of people, because with the cloud, you don't need a big, huge company anymore with office space and servers. You just need a Mac and a living room. And we built a SaaS solution because that was what people were doing for Marketplace. And it was good. And one of our value addeds was to make it cheaper than the legacy vendors who have all their legacy overhead. But one thing that we targeted was, could we make it even cheaper? And that had us look at serverless. And so as I had hinted that, not only did it make our product cheaper, it just made it so much easier to use, so much more efficient, and then, as I said, is so much more secure. And these were dividends that we really hadn't expected, but just fell into our lap, and now we're just never going to go back. So I'll talk about our journey. Was we had a SaaS starting point, and the point of serverless was to drive out wasted money. But then the amount of wasted time our SaaS solution was taking was driven out, and a lot of the inflexibility that SaaS brings also just vanished. And hopefully by the end of the presentation, you'll be convinced that if your solution warrants it, there's still stuff that needs to run on SaaS and EC2, 24/7 online databases with a custom UI. But if your solution was like ours, you'll make the transition to Lambda and you'll never go back. So where we started was, we have a product, it was called Thunder for EC2. Thunder, get it like cloud. And it was a disaster recovery automation solution for the public cloud. And it was focused on automating the replication of snapshots across AWS regions for disaster recovery protection, attaching those snapshots to remote instances, and then powering them on for testing. It was pretty straightforward. It used just standard Amazon APIs. We didn't copy the data ourselves. We just used the EC2 EBS block snapshots, and then we copied them across regions. And it presented a custom user interface where you could see all your instances in one region, provision duplicates in the remote region, nice little flag showing the different parts of the world where you might have your instances. And then the big red button that any disaster recovery solution had, that in the case of the unthinkable outage at the primary region, you would just go to this UI, click the button, and it would fail over all your instances and you'd be back in business. Because we try to convince people in the disaster recovery sphere that outsourcing all your infrastructure to a public cloud doesn't make them bulletproof. There is a non-zero chance that one day you wake up, I hope not, that US West 1 vanishes. That would be bad for me, maybe not for everyone on the call, but it's non-zero. But you don't want to spend a lot of money protecting it because it's a low chance. So Thunder was supposed to be that middle ground where we were charging less per year than our biggest competitors were charging per month because of the lack of overhead. All of this was developed with Mac laptops and a credit card. We didn't buy a single piece of equipment. We didn't rent a single square foot of lab space. And that's the new way of doing business to the cloud. But looking at serverless, the main motivation was to drive out wasted money, because the problem with something like a storage infrastructure solution is once you launch it through CloudFormation, the first things it does is nothing. Okay, because people aren't replicating their data continuously, they're replicating it on a schedule. And some of them were doing it once per day, which meant that our product was running as a SaaS instance 24/7 and working only for 15 minutes a day. But Amazon doesn't care. You're getting charged for the EC2 instance, not for the amount of work it did. And so we had a dedicated EC2 instance, even though it was a micro instance, was still almost doing nothing. And we wanted to wipe out those idle cycles. And that's hundreds of dollars a year anyway, that you're just throwing down just for hosting this solution. So what we did was we converted our logic, which was a Java function, well, it was a Java code that just used the APIs to do the replication and testing. And of course, we faced the 15-minute timeout in Lambda. So we just broke out our logic into chunks where it did a snapshot, then it exited. And then when it woke up 15 minutes later, it said, is the snapshot done? Okay, let me attach it to my backup instance. All right, then when it woke up next time, it said, okay, did that complete? Let me power on the instance and test it and make sure it works. Because in disaster recovery, testing is everything. If you have a solution on paper that you've never tried out, you don't have a solution, because it's the one piece of software that absolutely must work perfectly the first time you use it. And there's other stuff. If your backup doesn't work, you can take another backup. If your database transaction is slow, you can speed it up. If you forgot to replicate data and your primary region vanishes, you're out of business, period. So it was a little bit of work to break up the logic, but not that bad. And you call the function periodically, and the function figures out what it's supposed to do based on the current state. Oh, a replicated snapshot's completed. I need to attach those to the backup instance. So our 24/7 SaaS instance became a Lambda function that ran roughly 2 minutes a day at 0.00001667 cents per gigabyte second. It was free. It was free. Or we did the math, it was like $20 a year. And our biggest disaster recovery automation solution competitor charges just a fee for their license of $299 per month. So it's now, instead of 10% of their cost, it's less than 1%. So if you wanted DR and you didn't want to spend a lot of money on it, there's nothing cheaper than Lambda. So we could have stopped there. Okay, this was just our serverless logic, as I discussed. It was pretty straightforward. We didn't have to write a lot of new code. We just had to split up. Because again, the 15-minute timeout was problematic, where if you're replicating a snapshot between regions and your code waits for it to complete, it may have to wait longer than 15 minutes because it's indeterminate. It depends how much data is being replicated, the size, the amount of data, and the distance that it's traveling. But instead, the code takes the snapshot and then exits. And then the next time the Lambda function is called, it just checks to see, oh, there's a snapshot in progress. I'm not finished, or oh, it completed. So it just does, it's like a state machine that figures out what to do. So it wasn't rocket science, but there was a little bit of work to be done. And again, the cost saving was very easy to quantify. We just used the Lambda metrics on some workload, and that we found if you had, say, 10 EC2 instances that were replicating once per day, it would cost you $27.96 in Lambda, assuming you use the free tier, which to our existing customer base is that's Friday bagels and cream cheese. That's not Amazon spending. It's as cheap as you can get. And so again, everybody wants disaster recovery until they see the price tag for something that's 1 in a million chance for $27 a year. I mean, for crying, plus our license fee, for crying out loud. Why not? So we could have stopped there, but then we realized this was just the beginning of the benefits of the serverless. Rather than the cost being 1% of our original SaaS, that was just table stakes. So another problem we faced with our SaaS was the minute you deployed it in the customer environment, it's like a new car. The minute you drive it off the lot, it's a used car. And so our instance aged rapidly. So we used Ubuntu 16 LTS, which is nice, but 3 years later, you're at Ubuntu 18 and customers start to grumble is, why are you, the 2015's called, they want their operating system back. And then the user interface, oh my gosh, once you put one of those out in the wild, you have to patch that regularly. And then Java, everybody knows, is the version you use today is not the one that's available tomorrow. So the time that we had to spend keeping operating systems, web servers, everything up to date with security patches, and something like an operating system, a forklift upgrade, cost us and our customers as much time as almost building the product. So if you've used the serverless model or not, is Amazon brings the operating system to the table, and it's always the latest and greatest one. And our code doesn't care, or if it does care, we'll recompile and redeploy it. But no one ever has to upgrade an operating system again. This is Amazon's problem. Okay. Then we realized, oh, wait a second, if we went serverless, what happens to our user interface? You can't run Apache on a function, okay, because it's not running 24/7. And I made the executive decision that all those thousands of lines of JavaScript and all the hidden time bombs in them, we threw them out, threw them in the garbage. Goodbye, have a nice day. And instead, we use native interfaces. So our product doesn't really need a live UI. And so all of those security vulnerabilities vanished. You want to configure it, you use CloudFormation. You need access to the logs, they're in CloudWatch. We made some static HTML pages out of it to make it a little easier to look at. And we present them through CloudFront, through assigned URL. All of a sudden, every single minute we spent trying to keep Apache up to date and patched and secured just vanished overnight. And we spend 0 minutes on it. Our customers spend 0 minutes on it. Amazon has the problem of keeping their stuff secure. Well, they're going to do it, okay? Because if there's a problem with CloudWatch or CloudFront, millions of people suffer. So we outsourced our UI to Amazon, which is what we should have done in the first place, because that's not our value added. Nobody bought our product because we had a cool user interface. So the time that we ended up spending keeping our infrastructure up to date went from painful to 0. Okay. And as I mentioned, Log4j was the obvious case in point. Because I don't know about you, when I saw that there was a vulnerability in Log4j, I was astounded. That was the last place I would expect there to be a vulnerability. Okay, I tell my non-techie, the few non-techie people here in Silicon Valley, it's the equivalent of your electric toothbrush being hackable. Like, it's a logging system. It prints date, time, and an error message, but apparently hackers can get into it. And of course, our SaaS solution, of course, we use Log4j. Every piece of Java software uses Log4j. And in fact, as an aside, we actually have a solution for Google Cloud too, which is still SaaS, because their serverless is not as mature as Amazon. We had to respin the entire thing for this one vulnerability to bring us up to Log4j 2.17. But for our serverless, there's no need to use Log4j. Our function prints to standard out, which is captured by CloudWatch logs. We use the API to scrape those logs. Amount of time we spent updating Log4j was 0. And it happened in December, as near the holidays, and all our other companies were scrambling. We went on vacation. Okay, so the more you have, when serverless forces you to go more native cloud solutions, but that puts the onus on Amazon, which is what we want, because again, nobody buys our product because our logging is awesome. We use this stuff because we have no choice. We take it out, we don't lose any business, and Amazon has the responsibility. They're going to keep their stuff. And in fact, we found out Amazon doesn't use Log4j even in CloudWatch, so they didn't have to do anything either. They must have known better. So all of a sudden, all of that headache time keeping our stuff up to date and our customer stuff up to date just vanished. But maybe the most important one is we drove out wasted flexibility. And this one, a little bit of specific example here is that our SaaS solution had a lot of custom update mechanisms in place. If we had a new version of the software, we had a little button in our UI that checked to see, and it had to download, and it had to do a MD5 check against, and all this stuff. We had a bunch of support scripts that helped you test your various solutions. So for instance, like I said, testing a DR infrastructure is as important as replicating the data. So we had some scripts that did deep testing, for example, connected to MySQL and made sure that your remote instance not only could boot, but could actually issue MySQL, SQL transactions. Because it's not enough that your EC2 instance starts. Is the application actually recover? You have to connect to it to find out. And then we had a lot of other custom infrastructure. We wrote our own scheduler. Like I said, Log4j, we used cron, which doesn't even have an API. And it was just such a headache. With the serverless model, you want new code, just get the jar file, slap it on the function, get on with your life. That's it. That's it. That's the update model. And we put it on an S3 bucket, and we have different versions of it. And we do S3 bucket logging, so we know who picked it up. I don't know why anyone would do anything else. Otherwise, we have to host it somewhere, and custom button is, you need to fix a serverless code, you plug the jar file into the Lambda function. Even a 6-year-old can do it, probably even better than I can. We have new test scripts that we wanted. Oh my, it was a headache. Customers had to download them, somehow get them onto their SaaS instance, probably an SCP or something like that. We talked about SSH. For serverless, we just packaged it as a CloudFormation template. You want to now test your Redmine server or your SAP server, just download the zip file from our S3 bucket, launch it in the CloudFormation, and you've got a new test script. And you know where it is. It's in your Lambda function. It's in your Lambda list of functions that you have. And then CloudWatch events and CloudWatch logging do all the schedules and logging. We don't have to lift a finger doing any of that stuff. No more cron tabs, no more whatever. You want to run it every 15 minutes, EventBridge will do it for you for 15. You want to run it every 30 minutes. I don't have to tell you how to do this. You could figure this out. So the product became overnight, from the SaaS creaky model of a bunch of moving parts trying to keep it up to date, to just go to the right service in Amazon and it'll update. You can update anything you want, and Amazon keeps this all secure. So the endpoint we ended up with is, instead of a SaaS EC2 instance sitting around 99% of the time doing nothing, we have a Lambda function that, when it's awake, does useful work and then spends the rest of the 99% of the day sleeping, like my neighbor's cat. We don't need any cron tabs. We just use EventBridge to create rules to do stuff. We don't have a user interface. You want to configure our product and you need to put in a few text boxes or pull down menus. That's CloudFormation. And that's one user interface that everybody knows. Okay, there isn't an Amazon user on planet Earth. So we don't have to explain to people how our custom UI works. It's called CloudFormation. Everybody knows it, and it's secure. And Active Directory issues vanish. Is who should be allowed to configure this product? The IAM user who you want to make it to. Because again, we don't want to do IAM. That's just, it has nothing to do, it's related to disaster recovery. You want to be able to give permissions to the appropriate people to configure and such. But do we want to reinvent the wheel of authorization and authentication? Absolutely not. But we just hand it over to Amazon. And if you want user X to be able to deploy this template, you give them access to it or not. And then what was the saddest thing though, was the big red button disappeared, because without the UI, let's say you wake up one morning and heaven forbid, California, the big one hits and US East 1 disappears. But that's okay. I've been replicating our US West 1 to US East 1. Where's the UI? What button? No, just go to EC2 console in US East 2, find all your EC2 instances that you backed up and tested and replicated and know are going to work, and turn them on. And that's your failover, because that's really what happens. So again, the UI is just the EC2 console. Anybody can do this. Let's say you're the DR expert, but you're on vacation that week. Just tell whoever's in the office, go to EC2 and turn them on. Will they work? Of course they work. We've been testing them all the time, and deep testing as well. So you will survive. And the thousands of other customers who counted on Amazon or didn't do anything or didn't test their DR solution, I pity them, because no product works the first time without testing it. And once a year is not enough, because we tell customers who say, yeah, I test my DR solution once a year. If we QA'd our software once a year, would you be happy with that? No, you test it once an hour, once a day, once every 5 minutes. But with our solution, it costs you $30 a year. Buy one less bag of bagels and you'll break even. So as I said, the other benefits are we're always up to date. So we run our code on Java 11 because that's what Amazon does. In 6 months, we might get an email from Amazon that says, hey, we're going to provide Java 12, FYI. So we test our code on Java 12. Of course, it works fine. If and when it ever comes and the customer wants to move up, let's say that they want to move to the latest Java, they think it's more secure. Think about your enterprise vendors where, let's say I bought a software from a big enterprise vendor and I say, I want to go to Python 3.9. Your product only supports Python 3.5. The product manager will say, sure, we'll put it on the roadmap and I'll talk it over and the engineers and okay, 12 months from now we'll get it. But of course that becomes 18 months and then there's an upgrade. And then finally you get what you want. With serverless, just go into the pull down menu, pick Python 3.9 and get on with your life. And everybody's happy. How do I know it works? Because we tested it first. Yeah. Or I'm sorry, we had some code that doesn't compatible, but hey, go to this bucket. There's a new jar file that works with it or new Python scripts that work with it. You know how to update those, update the function, have a nice day. Total amount of time spent from start to finish, 5 minutes rather than 18 months. There's just no feature of software deployment and care and feeding that didn't get infinitesimally easier or exponentially easier, however you want to say it, with serverless. For something like ours, which runs irregularly, doesn't need a UI, and people don't want to spend a lot of money on it, there was just absolutely zero reason to run SaaS and every single reason to run serverless. And the same thing is if there's bug fixes, we fix it, we slap it on an S3 bucket, we send you an email, go to your function, update it, and then the next time EventBridge kicks it off, you just got the fix and everybody's happy and everyone gets on with their life. Even more benefits. We wanted to put together a phone app. And I don't know about you, but Objective-C or whatever Apple stunt that they pulled to make apps is just so far off the reservation, it's unthinkable. Instead, we just put together some static HTML because that's really all that you want. Put it on a CloudFront, signed certificate, and then it's on your phone. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. The amount of time we spent building a phone app was 5 minutes, and it's all secure, and it always works. It works on any phone anywhere. I could just go on and on. We want a new function to test a new application, or the customer wants to write their own. All right, pull up your nearest Python, use the Python library that connects to any application, deploy a function in Lambda, make sure you attach it to the VPC of the application so it connects over the private network so it's secure, so there's no having to open firewall ports. And then if there's any passwords that need to be stored, we store them in Amazon secrets, AWS secrets. Why on earth? We completely got out of the encryption business. So when we have to fill out the encryption form, what do you use? Nothing, zero. Well, how do you store passwords? We don't. Amazon does, because that's not our value added. And it's 40 cents a month, but it's 40 cents well spent. Every single thing that we were doing, reinventing the wheel, and that wasn't central to our mission, suddenly vanished overnight. And it was put in the hands of the organization that is most qualified to do it and that everybody knows, and that's Amazon. So in summary, if your SaaS solution only operates occasionally, and that was described ours, was it woke up once an hour or sometimes once a day to replicate snapshots and attach them and test them. So roughly 2 or 3 minutes of work, you can't run SaaS because you'll just be wasting cycles, and you have a system that's a potential target for hackers to go into. And if you have a web server, and a custom UI, think hard, do you really need it? It was tough to throw all that code out. I mean, we had some outsourcing, we did some ourselves. It's fun to build your own UI, it was even more fun to throw it in the garbage can, because the amount of time I spend keeping Apache up to date has dropped to zero, and my life is all the better for it. This is all Amazon's problem. And they will keep it up to date, because if they don't, the world is in serious pain. And then the extensibility, it's smooth sailing. You need a new Python script to run a test for a custom app. You write a function. Amazon, you know where it is, you know where the code is, and it connects securely over a private network. There's just no better way to do it. So as a result, we went in trying to reduce cost. And what we realized is that was only the tip of the iceberg. We reduced the time and we reduced the complexity of our solution. And those benefits are at least equal to reducing the cost. We were cheap in the first place, but almost even better. So it all sounds gravy. So I have to add here, the one problem we faced, and it was unclear, is, so we came back to Amazon, we're a partner, and said, okay, we have a new marketplace solution. We want to replace ours. And they said oh, we don't support Lambda functions on Marketplace, because Marketplace charges you by the hour. Remember that your solution, the licensing cost is not an upfront fee unless you bring your own license. And we didn't, because we didn't want to be into licensing business. We just said Amazon, you sell this thing and then send us 80% of it and you get to keep whatever. So we don't need to hire a bunch of accountants. What if your thing runs for 2 minutes at 0.0016? Who makes the money here? So this is where we stand right now, is we're at a stalemate with Amazon. Is we want to replace our marketplace solution with the serverless one. There's no serverless marketplace. There's a Lambda function repository, but that's for free stuff that people just want to. We're not giving this away for free. We still want to charge a license fee for it, but we don't want to base it on usage, because there is no usage. So this is where we stand. So in the meantime, we're going at it solo, just charging directly for it. But we're telling Amazon, and we have a few serverless champions within the company who want to get this going. It's just Amazon is an aircraft carrier, right? It just takes a while for it to move. So we don't expect overnight. But we're just telling them that this is where things will go. You better be ready, and we want to be out at front. But those are business. Those are business considerations. But the long of the short is, going into serverless, wow, it was cheaper, but then the other benefits we didn't consider, and whoops, but that we realized the other benefits just came fast and furious, and now there's no going back. Going forward, any solution that we're considering, Lambda is the first stop. And if for some reason it can't be done, the 15-minute timeout is too problematic, or we need to run an online, always available server or web server, that's fine. EC2 isn't disappearing tomorrow. But rather than SaaS first, oh yeah, okay, I just fire up an EC2 instance and I deploy my software. The thinking should be, can I do this all with Lambda and the other cloud services? And if so, that's the way to go. So we have a demo. You can also a hands-on in your own environment. I'll put it in the chat. If you want to try it out yourself for free in your own environment, it won't cost you really anything. It's just a function. And then if you want to get in touch with me, it's info@thundertech.io. I'd be more than glad to go over a demo if this is interest either to you or your company, or just personally, we're just getting into serverless, because we have become serverless evangelists also, because just being part of the community is, we want to make money off our solution, but we want to educate. That's why when we go on Reddit, we don't just make a plug. Is people ask a serverless question, funny you should ask, we tell them, and we give our story. So again, I really appreciate the chance to get in here. A lot of times it's just serendipity. That's the key to business. You never know when you'll just give the chance. And I could just take questions also on it, but that was the talk I wanted to give. So thanks again. Let me put this in the chat, the link to the demo.
So Jason, do these functions run in the customer's environment or in yours?
Yeah, so they run in, so it's deployed as a CloudFormation template in your customer's environment. So we don't manage anything from ours. We don't have a cross account permissions. We don't want to go there because the customer should really own everything in their environment. But it's very, the function is only given IAM role that only for the operations that it needs to do. So it's not just some standard root key. And the most important one is that what's good about disaster recovery is the only operation you need to do on your primary instances is to snapshot the EBS volume. So in other words, the function cannot start and stop or terminate instances in the primary. So even if someone, I don't even know how they get on the function and upload different code, can only do any kind of reasonable damage at the secondary, which is your backup copies anyway. So the good thing about disaster recovery is there's almost nothing you really need to do to your primary, and the function is only given permissions to snapshot, and that's a constructive operation anyway. So if you deployed our solution in your environment and someone malicious, they don't have an interface to connect to with serverless, but somehow hacks into the code, the worst they could do is something to the backup instances, which isn't your production anyway. So, you wouldn't, you're at very little risk. So this is a win-win scenario for disaster recovery because you get the benefits of everything and very little risk.
I just wanted to say that was a really good point about the DR being tested once a year, but QA being tested every day.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good point.
Yeah, because people do say that. And I say is that no software works being tested once a year. Because the problem we faced is that if you put a new EC2 instances and you had a manual process to create the backup, who remembers to do that? You put a sticky note on yours, and if you forgot to do this and the unthinkable happens, there's no way to recover it, because if the region is down, you can't get at that volume. It's gone. So let me go on a limb here too, is that some people, we get into a debate about multi-AZ disaster recovery, where a customer wants to deploy an RDS database between two availability zones in the same region. And they say that's disaster recovery, and I don't have to spend money on it. Amazon does this for me. It's all good. I don't need your software. And my response is always the same, is how do you know it'll work? When is the last time Amazon shut down hard, not like a nice graceful shutdown? This is what happens. Disaster recovery is not someone hits the reboot button. It's one day it's working and the next day it's on fire. How do they know that thousands upon thousands of RDS instances and other workload will seamlessly migrate over to the backup availability zone? They don't. They could never know, ever. And any solution that you're trusting on faith is a solution that you'll face, is a facepalm. And I'm not going to make fun of you. I'm just telling you, you're assuming something is going to work that was never tested. I don't think I have to tell anyone on this call that that's a fallacy. And so with our solution, it tests every replication cycle. So once it attaches the backup snapshot to the instance, then it powers it on, and it does the deep test of it also, so that all of your instances are, as tested and up to date as possible. There's a chance it won't work, but it wasn't because for lack of trying. It was just the fluke. But you did your best due diligence to try to keep, do your testing. There's nothing more you could have done. Nothing is 100% guaranteed, but I don't know what more you can do. You were keeping your stuff up to date. You were testing it. You were testing the application itself. And then you were doing this regularly, I don't know. And then you weren't spending a lot of money on it. If it didn't work, your IT director of IT can't blame you for anything because you did your best. But yes, I'm glad you brought that up.
Jason, this is a
Question for you,
wonderful.
Jason.
Yeah, this was a wonderful, wonderful talk, and you brought me back to some failures in the past when you talk about not testing the backups. I worked at a company, we were doing C++, so that's how long ago it was.
Mhm.
And we lost our source control system because we were doing it ourselves because we were so smart. And it turns out our backups were backing up the C++ files and not the H++ files. So we were completely screwed.
Yeah. And you didn't know this until you needed them.
Right, absolutely.
And then you realize they weren't there. And unlike any other discipline, you can't get them back.
Right. You know, I do wonder when you talk about a region, how can you know that a region or an AZ fails? It made me think, you know, it would be expensive for Amazon to do this, but imagine Amazon coming up with a region with like a couple of AZs, and it was just a failure test region, and that they would say, every Friday, we're going to, you know, power off one of the AZs. And, you know, on the 30th of every month, we're going to kill the region just so you can experience it. That would be really expensive, but oh my God, what an opportunity.
Right. If they did that, then I would be quiet. But I that for them to prioritize that, like if they're the CTO, again, that's where disaster comes in, is that everyone wants to do it and do it the right way until they see the price tag. And that was our business model, is what price tag. So everybody wins here. But the other good thing about region to region, I'm glad you brought this up too, is that, you know, not only is when you bring up the EC2 instances is, well, what if the region is down? How do you know it will work? Well, we're making the presumption that if my DR site is US East 2 and I go into the console, I should be able to log into Ohio if California is down. If there's some dependency on that, Amazon has a real big problem. But also one way we do test it is you can set the endpoint URL of the API to something, and it's by default, you know, uswest1.amazon. But in our test, we set it to some bogus address saying is, if you want to talk to the primary, you can't, because that won't route. It'll just get vanished. Will our software still work? So we can do some reasonable modeling of a region failure by saying is, whatever Amazon API goes to the primary, please use this URL instead. And it's a bogus one, and that API won't work, and it seems to work. So there are a few services that always do seem to default to like Virginia or whatever, but the ones that we use are all region specific. And at the end of the day, if you need a failover, you just go to EC2. US East 2 should still be running if US West 1 is down. Okay, I can't guarantee it, but it's hard to think Amazon architected a single point of failure globally.
Yeah, except for when the icon for red on their dashboard was in S3.
Yes.
But that is funny. A couple other, and I'm going to riff for just a second. And if you happen to have a trivia question that you could, I'm going to try to give you a minute here to think, because we do our raffle based on trivia questions. And if you don't have one, I'll do one from sci-fi, and people either like that or are incredibly tired of me doing sci-fi trivia questions. But when you said it was painful to delete the code, we used to have a saying that said the code you delete has no bugs.
Yes.
Which we loved. I wonder, with your Lambdas, do you do Lambda signing?
Lambda, no. But if you can give me some more details, we can look into it, because what are you thinking there?
Well, there's you can set up a Lambda, you can set it up so that the Lambda source code has to be signed, and then you get to sign it. And so it's another level of protection.
Yeah. We're gonna look into that and yeah, because that makes sense. I mean, right now it comes from our bucket and but you're right. The more security we can put on top. So that's where we were hoping to go with Amazon and say, okay, what do we do to get this on the marketplace? Because with SaaS, if you want to launch a solution on marketplace, you have to have your SaaS solutions scanned by Amazon. You know, they have the whole car wash that you go through, and Google has something similar also. So that's why when we came back to them and they said, there's no marketplace for Lambda or Rutro. So yeah, we may have to do, we were hoping they would push that kind of stuff because they're the vendor, but without a Lambda marketplace, I think we're going to have to go there. So we will definitely look into it. Yes.
Yeah, layers of defense. And I have another question, but Adrian, why don't you go ahead?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks for presenting, Jason. This sounds cool. And I had two questions.
Yeah.
How is this different from the AWS backup product? And then how does your team plan for things like outages in the console, since the console doesn't have an SLA?
Excellent question. So yes, actually, so for Lifecycle Manager, I had written an article on LinkedIn, but I'm trying to find it. But so Lifecycle Manager doesn't test your solution if it tries to replicate it across distances. So it's good for backup, I guess, but DR without testing is not DR. So if they say is, oh yeah, we just go to Lifecycle Manager and you create, it's not, replicating snapshots is easy. Making sure that those snapshots work is everything. Because again, you're going on faith otherwise. Did I get all my instances? Are they the right size over there? So we would discourage Lifecycle Manager for DR unless Amazon has an appropriate testing facility in place, because DR is all about testing. And that's why too, on Reddit, when people start to ask, all right, I'm thinking of a DR infrastructure and I was thinking of this snapshot and this, I always tell them is start with the testing first. If you can't test it, you have no infrastructure. So even though you have the coolest way to copy data across instances, like the multi-availability zone, the fact that you've never seen it working disqualifies it in my mind, because it won't. Something that you haven't tested won't work, full stop. And then the second one, what was the second question?
I guess the second question was the AWS console. If the console is not available because it doesn't have an SLA, how does your solution survive? And then the earlier one to specify was AWS backup, not necessarily the lifecycle manager for EBS.
Oh, okay. But backup, to me, they were similar in that the snapshots are, unless they're verified, then they're not, they're I don't know what they are. Because that's a problem with backup too, is, you think you have backup until you need it, and then maybe you didn't, right? What Brian had mentioned about, yeah, we backed up our source code, except the header files. So I have this problem with backup also, is at least you have the stuff there that you can worry about. The problem with DR is if you take snapshots at primary region, they won't be accessible unless you copy them. And if you copy them across regions and you don't try them out, then you hope they work. So that's where I just keep going with it. Whatever they call it, if it doesn't have a verification model, it's not disaster recovery. And I'm not just being, oh no, our product does it. This is because of the pain that we found with customers who, let me give an example, is some customers back, and this is dating myself, would use software RAID to do disaster recovery, figuring they could put the second disk across the street. Or in the case where you are in Manhattan, you could actually put it under the Hudson River. There's enough dark fiber that your financial data center in lower Manhattan could have a backup site in New Jersey. Okay, and they're close, but again, something that wipes out both is pretty horrific. I don't want to think about it. And they said we got it for free because we already have software RAID, which makes 2 copies of data across 2 disks. Who cares where the second disk is? And with dark fiber, it's fast enough, there's little latency. But software RAID was not intended to have 1,000 disks fail at the same time. So the customer had an outage at their primary, the Halon went on, and the software RAID software hung up because it was expecting 1 disk to fail at a time. It was never architected for, I have 1,000 SCSI timeouts being all thrown at me at the same time. They never tried this. In theory, it should have worked. It should have. And in practice, it failed miserably and they ended up with nothing. And it was brutal. So if you point to me on paper something and I ask you, how do you know it will work? And you can't answer, I'm going, I gotta be, it's tough love. It's not just to be a jerk. It's, I want it to work for you because it's my fault if it doesn't work. So that's one. And then one with the console is you can still use the CLI and the API, and that's where the endpoint URL thing comes in, is that we set up the endpoint URL through an environment variable of the primary to be 10 dot whatever, something that's just unroutable. So we use the CLI as a backup, having it degraded so it can't talk to the primary. And yes, you can still power on your EC2 instances, and there you go. But what you don't need is our solution running, because all you need to do is failover is power on EC2 instances. Now, we can't guarantee it because Amazon's not going to shut down US West 1 just for us to try it out. But on the other hand, there have been outages, and people have written it into Reddit saying oh, no, my service is still working. You know, Virginia seems to go down. Like, we never host anything in Virginia anymore because it just seems to be oversubscribed. And so there's real world examples where they have had lengthy outages, and yet other regions are okay. So we think that's okay. Same thing with Google. I mean, they post that, you know, whatever people think of Google is they are very honest with their any issues that they have. They tweet them out. And, you know, we try out, we see those and go, okay, does their cloud still work? And it seems to be able to hobble along when something is down. So we're hoping it's okay. If it's not, but that's something we can't test in reality, but that's okay.
Yeah, thank you for that answer, Jason. Yeah, I think the thing that most people have to work around is IAM, because IAM is centralized, and if it goes down, you have problems on the control plane.
Yes,
Otherwise,
yes.
Yeah, I love the solution. Thanks for presenting it today.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Those are great questions. Yeah, but your CLI is your backup in case. And if you don't know the CLI, you could pick it up pretty quickly.
Yes, I was thinking that the CLI is your fallback.
Yeah.
Hey, Jason, thank you. It was a great talk. I'm glad Brian recorded it because I'm going to pass it around. And the question I have is there something you are missing with this serverless migration? Is there this thing I am missing, this small piece in the edge of it? I would have preferred to have a solution that you are not having with serverless.
That's an excellent question, and the answer is no. In the sense that whatever we ran into, there was a service in Amazon. So the secrets manager was an example. This is a great question. I'm glad you asked this. I mean, there may be things that could be improved, but that whatever, I mean, for instance, we didn't even think we'd have to throw, it's obvious, but going into it, we didn't realize we'd have to throw out our UI. You're so used to hosting an Apache web server on everything. Oh my gosh, with a function that executes once every 15 minutes for a minute, where did that go? And then we poked around, because if you're like me, Amazon has so many services, we don't know them all. There's just no way. So we poked around and said, oh, well, there's this CloudFront thing. I mean, we knew CloudFormation, but so for example, Secrets Manager was a really good example, we need to store the password somewhere. So I'll spend a minute going down a rat hole on this. Where do we store the password? Oh my gosh, there's an Amazon password repository. This is awesome. But our function, so for example, our test function needs the password, but our test function runs on the private network because it wants to connect to, say, MySQL database only over the private network, because you don't want to have to open a public, you put our security group, but it can't run an API call to retrieve the secret from the private network because it can't get to Amazon's API server. So instead, our function retrieves the secret and then passes it as a parameter securely to. So we ran into a few meshing of the gears issues. But otherwise, what we found, and that's why we were confident in our solution, it just felt good. The gut feel was whatever issue we ran into, there was a service that did exactly as we wanted. Event Bridge, we want to schedule this every 15 minutes. We don't use cron anymore. Oh, there's Event Bridge. Now, there were some hiccups where Event Bridge rules can only have 5 rules per, or something, 5 rules per rule, or 5 triggers per rule. And if you want to replicate 6 EC2 instances, okay, then we create another rule. So in our testing, we ran into some stuff, but oh gosh, there's only 5 triggers per rule. Oh, you just create another rule, and then off you went. So every time we found a new service and we ran into a speed bump, there was some elegant way to fix it. And all software people on the call, you just know when it's right, right? When things are just falling into place. And we just never faced a showstopper. We never had to hack or kludge anything into it. Everything we wanted to do, our CloudFormation template runs a custom function in the back to create things that's perfectly okay in Amazon. There were a lot of examples. There was never a Stack Overflow question that wasn't answered. Anytime you ask a question and there's no answer, you get a little nervous. So that was the point, is that Amazon, that's why also we're reluctant to do this for Google, because as much as we like Google Cloud, there are services that are missing or that are incomplete maybe, and that would make our solution missing stuff. So we've been trying to encourage Google. Google has, we're tiny compared to them, and yet they do seek out our feedback. And so we're trying to tell them is, if you want to, you got to play some catch up in your serverless, because it's missing some stuff.
Yeah, Jason, we've got a couple more questions,
Yes.
and I'm going to use moderator's prerogative to jump in with one of mine, which is, have you thought about step functions?
We thought about that too, and that actually probably in retrospect could have, instead of breaking out our code into its own kind of step functions per se. So part of it was, because also we did look at serverless years ago, but the 5-minute timeout was too strict. We couldn't get anything accomplished in 5 minutes. But once they bumped that up to 15 minutes, that was enough headroom that whatever, because the problem with that, the one problem is, if you hit that timeout, it kills your stuff. There's no graceful, hey, okay, and with Amazon's APIs, you're in the middle of something that's unpleasant. Then we had to have some serious, but 15 minutes was, if something didn't finish in 15 minutes, there's something wrong, because we're not waiting for stuff to complete. We're just issuing snapshots and attachments and such.
Right.
So that's where we stood. But yeah, there's always another service we could potentially look at, especially if Amazon Marketplace doesn't. We thought they would have a marketplace for functions too.
Right. So we do have one more question, but I also want to get our swag in there. And Jason, send me your postal address, and I will send you a mug as thanks for saving us today. So that's
Sure, absolutely. I want the mug too. Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The other question too from Jonathan D.
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so this was a good one about
the subscription management.
Yeah. So we don't like subscription because, for example, for disaster recovery, why are you going to pay us 5 years straight and stuff? So we are going to charge a flat fee for this. And that what we just do is you send us a VPC ID, and then we generate a signed key based on that. And then off you go. So what our model is
license that people buy, in other words.
Right. And then it's unlimited. You get the first one free. That's why this hands-on demo to try it out. But While advisors have said, no, you should have the premium version and then up to 10. First of all, I've never liked that in the first place, the same software. And I understand it why legacy vendors, but our business model is if we could capture 0.01% of the Amazon customer base, we're good. And we don't need to nickel and dime them. So it doesn't phone home, but it does, we do ask you for a unique identifier. And what we found other people do is like an ID in your account that's unique, a VPC ID, and then generate a signed key based on that. So you can't hand over this key to somebody else. You'll always have the default VPC called VPC 1234 or whatever. So some basic stuff, because also we just don't want to get in the license and tiering business. This may make us more money, but it's the time spent. You know, that's why Marketplace was good. They did all the accountant bookkeeping, but with serverless, we're on our own. So yeah, and we want to try to avoid the phone home. It's a good thing, but you know, and also there's just no server or anything on it. It's just CloudFormation. It asks you one question: where's your DR site? And then another CloudFormation template lists all your instances. Which one do you want me to make a copy of? What VPC do you want to put it in? Well, how big do you want it? Because you need those backup instances. Because when we replicate snapshots, you have to attach them to something so you can test it out to make sure it works.
And is it just EC2 instances that you manage, or if people have, like, for example, RDS that they're using for enterprise database, do you also manage that?
No, so we didn't do RDS. One reason was there was just too much multi-AZ is the way to go. And we would get into this match about, okay, yeah, show me this working. And it got a little, but also our feeling was there's a few customers who were only RDS. It was usually supporting something else that was on EC2. And we've gotten some questions about, you know, Kubernetes and containers and such. So there are other models to go. But right now, if it's RDS, we could do it if it's an EC2 instance, but most people just seem to go with the cold or hot standby, as much as I'm unnerved by it. But you know,
yeah, but you'd need that in the same region that you're sending your stuff to, which is not the local AZ.
Right. So there has to be some way that they would do it. And so
Yeah.
I tell them, so right. So that's the other thing I never understand is multi-AZ works for RDS, but the apps that it's supporting can't do that. So what's your solution for that? And so yeah, we could do RDS if you wanted to. It's just another instance, because there's nothing particular about it that's unique. It's just because it has its own native quote unquote disaster recovery, it makes the discussion a little muddled. Oh, I got DR for RDS. Yeah, okay, what about everything else? Well, I don't know. I'll do Lifecycle Manager or something. So
yeah, and I think some of the RDS offerings actually have global replication now too. So they could probably spin their own and then use your system for instances or something. Yeah, very cool. Thank you for the talk.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And so Jason, do you have a trivia question you could ask? Don't ask it yet, but just do you have one? Because else I can do one.
Why don't you do it? I mean, it's tough on the spot for it.
Sure. Sorry. So the way we do it is I ask a sci-fi question and put your answer in the chat. First one who answers it wins. And if my answer is too obscure, I'll give hints. My question is, Ben Browder played John Crichton and Claudia Black played Aaron Sun in Farscape. And what other major series did they both appear in? Yes, but
Larry got me. I can't believe it.
but David, I can't ship it to you.
No problem. Larry beat me.
I have to meet you. Okay.
Yeah, Larry got the win, I think.
Larry got the win.
Oh goodness! I didn't even. Oh, okay, Larry. Yes.
I cannot believe it. He beat me to it. Congratulations, Larry. Well done.
So Larry, send me your postal address, and I'll put it here to my email, briantarbox@gmail. So okay, Jason, I'll grab that. And Larry, if you could send me yours as well, and I will get you mugs out. This has been fabulous. I'll just do a quick thing. We had just about a 50-50 split of new people to the meeting. We had 22% of our attendees were outside the US, which is awesome. A nice split of experience levels. About 2/3 have certifications, and we will try to go hybrid when we can. But thank you so much. This was so much fun. And so Jason, send me your thing, but this is awesome. And the last thing I'll say, Jason, is your talk, I could easily see you giving that talk at Werner Vogel keynote at reInvent.
I would be thrilled. I tried to reach out to Werner, and I'm probably
You're
one of
right
a dozen.
about that. It wouldn't look out of place there.
Yeah, Jason, I have some hero contacts. I'm gonna, if you would be okay with it, I'm gonna see if I can push, because that's exactly the sort of talk we want to see at Werner's.
I would be thrilled. I was just pleased to do it anyway. I could talk for hours on disaster recovery. Your questions were terrific. Also, this was the perfect audience, but absolutely, I'm a big fan of his. I heard his talk at the one of the events in Santa Clara here nearby. He's just a terrific speaker also. So that would be terrific.
Right, and just the one thing I'll just say, so Jason, I got your address in Los Altos, and Larry, if you could just email me your postal address, I'll get you the mic. So awesome. Thank you, team. Thank you for bearing with it. We pivot, but hey, we pivot. As Werner would say, everything fails, and it's just how you deal with it.
Yes,
So,
and it
yay,
was
all of
great.
us. Yay, all of us. All right.
It was a great talk.
Take care.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone.
See you later.
And Larry, it's briantarbox@gmail. Okay. All right. Cheers.